Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. My name is Paige and today I'm going to be talking to you about tips for living on one income. I'm a stay-at-home wife and my husband works outside of the home, so we do have limited resources. So we have to be careful how we spend our money and things like that to really make it stretch to where we can live the life that we want to be living. So all of that being said, let's go ahead and get started on the tips. These tips aren't in any particular order and I'm going to be looking down a lot because I am looking at my list. So tip 1 is to get on the same page with your spouse. I think that is so important that you and your spouse, if one of you are staying home or can't work or whatever your situation is, that you guys are on the same page as far as what you're doing and what your plan is, big picture, as far as where you want to end up and how much money you guys even have and all of those things. So just in general, sit down and talk about the situation, whatever your specific situation is with your spouse, and how much money you make and all of those things, which will be different for each person, each couple. So getting on the same page with my spouse might not look like this. We might not talk about the same things that you and your spouse will talk about, especially depending on if you have children and that kind of thing. So tip 2 is to make a budget, and I think this is crucial to maintaining and keeping your head above water, really, is to know where your money is going. So how are you supposed to save money and things like that if you don't even know what you're spending money on? So I use the Mint app. It's free. You can download it on your iPad or iPhone, or just like Google it and go to the website. I was sketched out about it for a long time because you sync your bank account with it, and I was really skeptical about giving my bank account information to a website. But it's actually, I think what the company is into. It's the same company that has TurboTax, Intuit or something like that. I'm looking at my husband behind the camera to see if he remembers, but something like that. So it's a legit company, and they watch your bank account, and it's super easy to just say what comes out and then make it a category, and then your budget's on there and it goes straight into that, so it kind of keeps everything in line and all of that stuff. So I would recommend checking that out and just do that, or pen and paper, Excel spreadsheets. Really, I mean, whatever works for you, but make a budget, and don't just make a budget and then not reconcile it. So make a budget, and then at the end of the month or every week or however works for your schedule and what you're capable of, see where you actually spent the money. So I do that on the Mint app, but whatever system you use, just make sure that you incorporate it to where you're not only making a budget, but you're seeing where you're sticking with it, if that makes sense. So I don't have these numbered on my list, so I might get out of order, but my next tip is to make sure that one spouse isn't making the budget and then the other one's not aware of it, because that's going to cause a lot of frustration between you and your significant other. If, let's say, I make a budget and I say, well, this month is really tight and we don't have any money for fast food. No money, there's no fast food in our budget. And my husband goes out and spends $10 at McDonald's because normally that's in the budget, but this month it's not, and then there's gonna be a lot of frustration because he didn't know, and I'm gonna be upset because now that's messed up on the budget. Go over your budget with your spouse. And that's along the lines of get on the same page and compromise and talk about all that kind of stuff. I'm a hand talker, sorry guys, so my hands are gonna be up here, but go over it with your spouse and make sure you're both aware of what the budget is and what money is in what categories of the budget. And let's say you've got, I'm trying to think of an example, $100 in the restaurant budget. So your husband's thinking, great, I can go out and eat lunch at work and I can go to these restaurants. But what you know is that you made that budget extra big because your child is having a birthday party or birthday and you're planning to go out to eat at a restaurant. So 50 of that's really set aside for something. Communicate that with your spouse. Just communicate and make sure that you guys know all of that stuff. Sorry, this video is kind of long, guys. And this is one that we've recently implemented, but it has worked so well for us. So there was a lot of frustration going on because we set aside fun money in the budget, but it wasn't a set aside for any particular activity or one of us in general. And so there'd be frustration because we were almost having to parent each other. Can I spend money on this or whatever? And the other person would say, no, you can't do that. It was almost a parent-child dynamic in some situations, which is very, unhealthy. So what we decided to do is make an allowance for each other. And it varies month to month depending on how much money we have, if we have extra. For example, I had to just get new tires on my car. So of course, when you get new tires on your car, that's going to adjust the rest of your budget, so there's not as much fun money left over. So it'll vary month to month, but let's say we've got $200 extra in the fund that we can spend at the end of the month, or I guess at the beginning of the month, but it's incorporated into the budget. We have $200 extra that month. Then we will each get $100. We take it out in cash. That's important. Don't do it on the card. Pull it out of an ATM, get it in cash. You guys each get $100, and we don't get any say on what the other person spends that money on, within reason, obviously, of what we're okay with, if that makes sense. But if he wants to go and get McDonald's, that's none of my business. That's up to him. If he wants to go and buy a Red Bull at work, none of my business. That's his money. If I want to go and buy a luxury lipstick at Ulta for $25, none of his business. So you guys get the idea. And it makes guilt-free, especially I know for me, I think a lot of other women, I feel guilty sometimes if I spend money on myself, especially if it's something that isn't 100% necessary and it isn't the cheapest version of that item, then I will feel guilty. But when I have this money set aside and it's for me, it's guilt-free spending for me, if that makes sense. And there's some months where I say, there's no money for restaurants in the budget, but we each get $100. So if we want to go out to eat, we have to spend that money to go out to eat. And one of us has to treat the other one to dinner, which is also, so we can actually take each other out on dates, if that makes sense, where we're spending our money on the other person. And it works great. It also really makes you stop and think before you eat out. Do I really want to spend my money on this? Instead of just swiping the card and thinking whatever. So that is, I think, huge as far as keeping spending down for things like that. And if you don't do anything else, I would really consider doing that one. If you're thinking, well, I don't want to do a budget and I don't want to reconcile, it's really simple to just take cash out at the beginning of the month. It's one thing at the beginning of the month, and that's it. So I would really try to do that if you guys can. So the next one is to cut the extra on the cable and the phone bill. And I'm not saying that you have to go down to the bare minimum, basic channels only, or even cancel your cable altogether. You might need to, depending on what if there's only one partner working and they don't make a lot of money, you might need to not get cable at all. But we do have cable, and we do have some extras. We have HBO and we have the Sunday Ticket, because those are important to us, and we use those channels and we watch those. So, but call your cable company and see what's on there, and there might be something on your plan that you don't even realize that's on there that's charging you $10 a month. And let me tell you, that $10 a month over a few different services that you might have really add up. So cell phone, home phone, cable, any kind of thing like that you have, call them and just say, what am I being charged for monthly breakdown? Or look on your bill if you had a paper bill and just see what's on there, and then even say, hey, I've been a loyal customer for 10 years. Is there any way you can lower my bill? The worst they can say is no. So that would be one that I would recommend. And this kind of goes along with everything. This kind of pulls everything together, and it's broad, but some of these I purposely made broad. My dog's outside. If you can hear him barking, I'm sorry about that. It's just howling at the moon. But decide your priorities. So this is so along with everything else. Like, as far as the cable goes, decide what your priorities are for cable. You might be able to afford to have cable and you can have one movie channel. You have to pick one movie channel. What is your priority? Or just anything. I mean, when you make a budget, you have to talk about what are your priorities. You might have kids, and one of your big priorities might be that you want to set money aside for their college, and that's high on your priority list. So just talk about that with your spouse, and compromise. So, and that's, I think, given, and I hope that all of you already do that with in your relationships, but compromise on certain stuff and priorities, and talk about what's important to your spouse and things like that. But pick what's important, because really everything isn't important. And there are things that come before other things that we spend our money on, and you have to decide those, because there are things you're gonna have to cut out, and that's how you'll be able to decide what you're gonna cut out and what you're gonna keep. And shop the deal, I think, is a big one as far as food goes, because groceries for me is probably my most expensive category given of the month. I think that's cost me more than my car payment. It costs me more than anything is what I spend on groceries. That is hands down. So shop the deals. I shop at Sam's Club. I buy things in bulk if I know I'm gonna use it and it's cheaper. Shop the deals, shop at Sam's Club, shop in bulk. If there's a lot of grocery stores around you, which I used to do before we lived here. There's like Walmart for me to buy my groceries at, and then there's one small local grocery store that everything is like twice as much as it is at Walmart. So I don't have a lot of options, but if you are somewhere that you've got a whole bunch of grocery stores, then shop what's on sale at each grocery store, put coupons on it, use Ibotta, which I can make another video about Ibotta on my next grocery haul, maybe showing you guys how that works, because you really can save money with it. But just pay attention to the deals, and if you're gonna make a big ticket item purchase, then maybe watch the prices for a little while, find out what's cheapest. If you see a pattern of it going on sale, then save up and wait for it to go on sale again, and just be conscious of your decisions and your purchases and aware of what you're spending money on and if you're getting a good deal or if you're not. So the next one is don't eat out, which I know can be easier said than done. Luckily, where we live, there's not really an option to eat out. There's no fast food restaurants or anything around here, so it's not like I can say, hey honey, grab something on your way home, because it's just not an option where we live. But we've lived places where it was an option, and we did spend a lot of money doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that if you can afford it, but if you're trying to live on one income, then that is definitely somewhere that you can cut back tremendously. And we do eat out sometimes, especially if we're gonna be in town all day or something like that, then yeah, we'll definitely eat out. But try to limit it and try to make it where it's not just because you don't wanna cook dinner, but it's because by necessity, if that makes sense. So the way that I wanted to include this as far as don't eat out, because I get that there are days where you don't have time and you know mentally that you're gonna be busy. So I work out my schedules of what I need to get done, and if I know that I'm gonna be super busy one day, then I have a freezer meal and I pull it out the night before and stick it in my fridge and I cook it the next day, and it's so tremendously easy for me to do. It's one day, maybe once every 2 months I spend one day and I make a big batch of freezer meals and stick them in my freezer, and those are my convenience meals of I can't cook today, it's just not gonna happen, and I plan to use those the next day, so I'll pull them out the night before. I do make frozen pizzas, and those are my last minute convenience meals, and I make homemade frozen pizzas and freeze them, and I've made a very thorough video over a big batch of freezer meals I made, and I'll link that right here for you guys to look at, because I get that you guys do need a convenience food. There's no question about that. So, but just try to work that ahead of time and plan, and do that. So the next one is monetize your hobby. So obviously I've created this YouTube channel, and that's a way that I've been able to make a small amount of money. Hi, Tater Tot. Go lay down, bud. Sorry, guys. And so obviously I'm in a YouTube channel. I also have a Poshmark, which is where you can sell your used clothes online. Just anything like that those are what I do. I mean, I know there's a lot more you could do. You could make an Etsy shop if you sew or quilt, or make baby clothes or headbands, or people even sell cookies on Etsy. They'll overnight ship it. So if you are a baker and you make these delicious, beautiful sugar cookies with this beautiful icing, then you can sell that on Etsy. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, but sorry if you can hear my dog in the background, but hashtag real life. But so monetize your hobby. If you love to do something, and hopefully you can find the time, if you are at home, to spend some time investing in that hobby, and then find a way to monetize it and make a little bit of extra cash. Don't do it. I wouldn't recommend like Ubers or anything like that unless you really do your research and stuff. It just sketches me out because I think the worst would happen. But I mean, there's so many things you can do at home that you're probably already doing that you can make money. So that is something to at least think about. And the next one is to live within your means. And this one seems kind of obvious, but it's not, because it's can be so hard to see people on Instagram and Facebook and billboards and magazines, and you're like, wow, such and such makes less money than I do, and they just bought a brand new car, so I should have a brand new car. No, because they're living outside of their means. You need to live within your means, even if other people aren't, because I think that gets as a trap for a lot of people, especially if you know what someone else makes and they're having nicer cars and have nicer houses, nicer this and not nicer that, then you're thinking, well, if they can afford it, then I can afford it. No, they're living outside of their means, and you're gonna live within your means so that in the future, you and your family can have a better life. So live within your means, know what you can afford, and don't go outside of that. If that means you have to save up money to make a purchase, that's just the stage that you're in, and that's the sacrifice that you make by staying home with your family or with your husband. So just live within your means, which I know is a silly one, but you really need to get in that mindset of, this is my life, that's their life, and this is what I'm doing. Don't impulse buy. I think that's another kind of one that you really need to think about. When you have a limited income, you can't afford to just go to the store and impulse buy a bunch of stuff. If you need to pre-plan what you're gonna buy and know if you need to buy something. So as tempting as it is when I go to Target, which I don't go very often because we live 2 hours from Target, but if I go into a Target, if I'm in a town that has one, I almost always go, and I always look at the clothes. That's my favorite place to shop, and it can be so easy to impulse buy something that's so cute and it's so inexpensive, and why not, because it's only $20. But I've got a shirt in my closet that looks just like it and fits my need for that article of clothing. So I'm not gonna buy it. Don't impulse buy, and really think through your purchases and decide if you need it and if you don't need it, and sit on it. And if it's something that you really need, then you'll need it next month and you'll be able to get it then. And my last tip, sorry, it's such a long video, guys, is to be practical with your purchases. And this is kind of a silly one, but really it kind of goes along with don't impulse buy, and think, do you really need it? And how is it gonna work for you? And are you gonna need it next month, and the month after that, and the month after that? How practical is it for your family and your lifestyle to buy that item? So I can't really think of a good example, but you guys know what I mean. If I'm thinking about like let's say my Keurig. If you're like, man, I really want a Keurig, it's not an impulse buy, I've thought about it for 3 months and I really want a Keurig, and so I think that I can get it. But is it practical for you? Do you drink coffee? If you don't drink coffee, but you only drink coffee once a month, then maybe you should think about getting a cheaper coffee maker than that, or something like that. Think if it's practical for you and your lifestyle. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So I'm sorry this video is so long. I really wanted to tell you guys about all of these and be kind of thorough, because I know the struggle of living off of one income and the pressure it can put on someone, especially I think the person that's staying home can feel a lot of pressure because they're not bringing home an income to manage what you guys do have well. I understand that feeling. So I just really wanted to be thorough and hopefully help you guys out with some of the things and really let you know what we're doing in some ways. So I hope this video helped you guys. I would love it if you guys have other tips to leave them down in the comments. This is the tip of the iceberg as far as finance and things like that. So go ahead and let's talk about it in the comments and tell me some of the stuff that you guys do to help manage the money in your home. And I hope you guys all have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.